Sometimes I would have some of my videos running on a second screen while I do something else. I was watching the video of Mira talking about Hanharr, Corrupted Life Debt, the Hanharr story. When she talks about the time she saved Hanharr's life, I noticed something that I was surprised I hadn't noticed before.
I didn't kill him once. Biggest mistake ever. I had the drop on him, and even blind, he knew it. He could still hear me. My ears were ringing from the blast, but I could hear him. I think he was begging me to let him live. His voice, it wasn't a roar, more like an echo of it. I suppose I should have killed him, but I couldn't do it. He was in pain, he was helpless. So I dragged him out of there enough to get him to safety, and he kept hunting me ever since. He said he'd pursue me to the edge of the galaxy. No matter where I ran, he would find me and break me, that I would always be prey.
We already knew that this was going on, but we never really got a clear example of it. We've had many moments like this.
The Force has guided us here for a reason.
But with Mira, the game is giving us an example of how the Force can directly and invasively manipulate separate individuals. Mira says that she thinks that Hanharr was begging her to let him live. But we all know that that is the last thing Hanharr wants.
Oh, the life debts of your people, the life debt you have twisted with your hate. I felt it within you.
In his mind, if his life is saved, the life debt he would have to pledge would turn him into a slave again. So how could it be that Mira was hearing this? She says that Hanharr's voice wasn't a roar, but an echo of it. An echo of it. In terms of sound, an echo is when noise hits a hard surface and reflects back to the listeners. Now imagine if that hard surface was the Force. If Hanharr was saying something and Mira heard different, and she specifically heard him begging for his life. I'm not saying that the Force is manipulating sound waves. I think the Force is still manipulating Mira. More specifically, the Force is manipulating her senses. The Mira Luca species perceive the world through the Force in an even more extreme way. It's the only thing they could possibly know throughout their entire lives, which means that if the Force has a will, the Mira Luca always see what the Force wants them to see.
And he made me see. And for the first time I saw the galaxy. And I wished to die. To this galaxy, my world, absent the currents and spectrums of the Force, was nothing but crude matter, rock, flesh, emptiness.
Being Force sensitive, the Jedi are much the same. They perceive the world through senses that are filtered through the Force. It was those who disconnected from the Force, like Kreia and the Exile, who saw their surroundings for what it was.
You were deafened.
At last, you could hear.
You were broken.
You were whole.
You were blinded.
And at last, you saw.
I mentioned Force sensitivity, but in reality it makes me wonder. The Force flows through all living things. The reality that all the people in this galaxy perceive, what they see, hear, and smell, is it really how they think it is? I can't say that the Force is micromanaging the senses of trillions of people, but with something that's seemingly omnipotent, I can't rule it out either. I have to maintain that people who are balanced within Force alignment can't be directly controlled by the Force. If I had to guess, I would say that most people who don't believe in the Force would be balanced, or at least closer to balanced than others. But that begs the question, are most people balanced, or do most people align to a side? Mira leans quite a bit towards the light, so she heard, "Save me." If she leaned to the dark, would she have heard, "Kill me"? That's a question because the Force seemingly wanted Hanharr alive. So instead, I would have to guess that she would have heard enslave me instead. Now why would the Force want Hanharr alive? What does the Force want? Why does the Force want anything? What is its motivation and what is its end goal? These are the questions that I'm afraid may never be answered. But someone did tell me a theory once that was awfully interesting. I'll have to make a separate video about that sometime in the near future. It is said that the Force wants balance. But who are the ones saying this? The Jedi. It is also said that the Force is a force of nature that should be harnessed, exploited, and used for one's own ends. But who is saying this? The Sith. Personally, I think they're both wrong. No one knows what the Force wants. No one has ever or can ever speak to it directly. All we see are the effects of it pursuing its objective. Galactic manipulations that constantly lead to war, which means its goal must include senseless war. Senseless to us, because we don't know the purpose of it, and whether it's Jedi and Sith or otherwise, it's almost always a conflict between the two extremes of light and dark. There's never any synthesis from these conflicts. Once it's over, no one ever learns anything about how to avoid it next time. They just go back to whatever it was they were doing before, and they watch out for the enemy.
Thesis and antithesis. The conflict is inevitable, but the resolution of the conflict yields something new, a synthesis, eliminating the flaws in each, leaving behind common elements and ideas.
But no one ever tries to solve the problem of why the enemy exists, or why you hate each other, or why you have to fight. In real life, the synthesis of conflicts resulted in the formation of the United Nations. It isn't perfect, but it's something. It may not seem this way, but there's a lot less conflicts in the world today than there were in the past. The only reason it doesn't seem like it is because information is easily distributed now. We hear about them more. So to an extent, we did learn from history, and that's what history is for. So we can look back and say, okay, let's not do that again. A recent debate I had with someone led me to conclude that it is possible for the Force to manipulate people who are disconnected from it, but only indirectly. It can't control the exile's actions, but it can control the actions of the people around the exile. However, it would have to be people who are not the exile's closest allies. Albeit possible for it to employ its machinations upon her party members, they would do anything for the exile. She creates very strong Force bonds with people easily, and even disconnected from the Force, she's a natural leader, and people feel compelled to follow her. In a way, the exile flows through all of her party members.
There's a greatness in you. A greatness that does not stem from the Force. It stems from who you are.
It might have been a constant tug-of-war match between the exile and the Force. A tug-of-war to claim the souls of the people around the exile. Perhaps the amount of influence you have with someone is the game mechanic that reflected this.
You must have noticed as you fought across all these planets, killing hundreds, only to become more and more powerful. Why do you think that was?
Even if she failed to do this, or came into contact with people who aren't bonded to her, in other words, people who the Force could use to influence her actions indirectly, Kreia was teaching the exile to stay true to herself, sometimes even suggesting that the exile use and discard these people as tools, all to avoid outside influence? Perhaps.
Then use their dependency, feed upon it, until you have exhausted them. Then leave them. And I would view the ones you travel with much the same way.
The writer for Rockstar Games, Dan Houser, said that he avoids watching television shows that resemble the themes of the Grand Theft Auto franchise too closely. He hasn't seen Breaking Bad, for instance, and I completely understand. he doesn't want his writing ending up being hindered by or overly resembling the narratives presented in those shows. There is a video on YouTube that is famous within the KOTOR community, The Philosophy of Kreia, a critical examination of Star Wars, by a person who shall remain anonymous for obvious reasons. I haven't seen the video. At first it was the 2-hour mark that was daunting, but after starting the Kreia's Conundrums series, I decided that I can't watch it. The numbers and its reputation tell me that it's worthwhile. I've also interacted with the creator in the comment section of some of my videos. Obviously an intelligent individual, so I have no doubt that it's a good video, but I'm too worried that it might influence my own thoughts on Kreia too much.
I have heard of your kind. You worship strength, when all it does is rot you from within.
You echo another's words, and as an echo it lacks strength.
It's not inherently a bad thing to quote someone or to retell what someone else said if it's because it adheres to what you truly believe. But when it comes to this video series, I want to see where my own thoughts take me and tell you what I think. The last thing I would want is for my words to merely be an echo. But this makes me wonder.
And the greatest of victories are not manipulations at all, but simply awakening others to the truth of what you believe, of hearing it echoed around you in life.
Will my words be echoed someday? If so, will the echo be accurate? Or will it go through a filter and come out the other end as a tool to serve one's purposes?